In order to combat challenges from an axis of authoritarian states, Rishi Sunak has pledged billions more for defense. The Prime Minister announced a prior budget commitment when he announced that military spending in the UK would increase to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. Although he emphasised that the UK was not on the brink of war, he asserted that the additional funding would place the nation's defence sector on a war footing. Additionally, Labour is dedicated to a 2.5% aim when financial circumstances permit. John Healey, the Shadow Defence Minister for Labour, stated that the party wants to see a fully funded plan to get to this point, but that the Conservatives have shown time and time again that they cannot be trusted on defence. If Labour wins the general election later this year, he said, it would reassess military resources within a year of coming to power. During a visit to Poland, Mr. Sunak made the remark about defence, stating that the UK was facing the most perilous international climate since the Cold War era involving the West and the former Soviet Union. Although he emphasised that the UK was not on the brink of war, he added that the increased investment would place the country's defence sector on a war footing. He countered that autocratic nations like China and Russia were demonstrating a new assertiveness and were cooperating more, thus the investment was necessary. Spending will increase steadily in each and every year before 2030, the Prime Minister promised. Over the next 6 years, the military will receive an additional £75 billion, according to Downing Street. It is reminiscent of a prior pledge made by former Prime Minister Boris Johnson in 2022 to increase expenditure to 2.5% of GDP by the end of that decade. Mr. Sunak previously stated that the UK will provide Ukraine an extra £500 million this year in addition to the £2.5 billion already allotted. He went on to say that the UK could keep helping Ukraine militarily, at least to the current level for every year it is needed. In addition, the Prime Minister stated that the 2.5% goal might establish a new benchmark for NATO, whose goal of having countries spend 2% of GDP on defence is now 10 years old. The data shows that the UK spent 2.07% of GDP on defence last year. However, it plans to spend 2.3% this year, including funds provided to Ukraine. The Transatlantic Alliance estimates that 11 out of the 31 nations of NATO met the 2% target last year. With 3.9% of GDP allocated to spending, Poland was the country with the highest level of economic spending, more than twice as much as it had in 2022. Despite being by far the largest spender overall, the US came in second position with 3.5% of total spending. The move follows mounting Tory pressure on defence after the March budget, with two ministers openly pressuring him to raise funding last month. Although Downing Street claimed that the 2.5% pledge was fully funded, numerous experts have already voiced doubts about the long-term goals. A more specific commitment to increase expenditure to 2.5% of GDP was previously made, but Paul Johnson, director of the research Tank Institute for Fiscal Studies, said it was not worth the paper it's written on unless accompanied by some sense of how it will be afforded. Members of the Public Accounts Committee (PAC) said last month that the government did not yet have a credible plan in place to finance the MOD. Despite receiving an infusion of £46.3 billion over the following 10 years, the Ministry of Defence was reported to have a £16.9 billion financial black hole by the National Audit Office last year. When asked previously by reporters whether he would rule out holding a general election in July, Mr. Sunak repeated his earlier statement that it will take place in the second half of the year.